This is the house I grew up in with my oldest brother Reeve and my three younger sisters, Sarah, Adeline, and Emma. We moved in here August of 2002. I was almost 8 years old. My mom said she'd want to live here until she grew old. The driveway's had a puddle in it about as long as I can remember. The basketball hoop was only really used by my oldest brother and my youngest sister. The three middle kids weren't much for athletes. This is the first thing you see when you walk into the house. The key motif came from a story relating to Eldia's family history that my mom would share when she was in the primary presidency. I don't remember it. This is the living room. It's gone through several different layers of paint. My mom always said that she wanted it to be colonial style. When we bought the house, this room was covered in lava rock and disco mirrors. For as long as I can remember, there's always been one nativity set on display throughout the year. My dad built all the bookshelves in the house. Here you can see some of my mom's china. One time I knocked the china cabinet over and destroyed most of it, but she wasn't mad. This is a shelf where we keep musical instruments. We used to keep our backpacks here as kids. Mine wouldn't make it here, and I remember Mom getting after me for that. This room is currently my room. Before that, it was my sister's room. Before that, it was the guest room. When we first moved in here, I would sleep up here sometimes because I was too afraid to sleep in the basement with my brother. This room is the kitchen. Everything you see behind the counter was built on by my parents. The fridge is the oldest appliance in the house. Everything else has been cycled through. We've had this since as long as I can remember. The faucet's been replaced 3 or 4 times. The bell behind it, my mom used to ring it every night at dinner time. She would call Kana Tai Hai down the stairs, which I think is Cambodian for dinner time, but I'm not sure. The dinner table we've had for a while too. We used to eat on a folding table because that's all we could afford and that would fit in the room. Once we got this, my dad would always sit at the end and then the rest of us would sit on benches on either side. In the background you can see landscape panoramas by my dad, an amateur photographer. You can also see one by him in the Wilkinson Center, behind the help desk. Behind the table there are 2 glass cabinets full of board games. I've always said it looks kind of tacky, but my mom likes to keep them there even though she's usually not playing. Despite the many bedrooms in the house, we somehow always have them full, so the computer tends to end up in the kitchen. That was also the case before we built on the house. The backyard has 2 rows of unseemly hedges that we always work together as a family to cut down once a year. There's also the trampoline that we installed even before we moved in. We would all use the trampoline for different things. Reeve and Sarah would always do tricks. I often just kind of jumped on it, thought about life. Dad built the swing set. Mom and Dad both wanted to put vines on the top of it. That never happened though. The family that lived in the house before us had teenage children, so there was a rope ladder up to a high fort and a long fireman's pole. Our dad built the second level shortly after we moved in. We used to have water fights in it. One time, a neighbor kid fell all the way off the top. Somehow he didn't get injured when his back landed on a stepping stone. We would play make-believe or Nintendo 64 in the basement. My earliest memory of it, however, was playing hide and seek in the boxes after we had moved. The wood-burning stove had a very distinct smell of burning dust when we first used it every winter. There's a black chest on the left that Sarah and her cousin John once locked themselves in. The dollhouse was a present from Reeve and me to my sisters, though it was my dad who built it. We were still pretty little. We used to have contests to see who could run down this hallway and jump the furthest onto the couch. We also tried to climb up this hall on the baseboards to touch the ceiling. A new sister moved in with us about 4 years ago. Her room is with the one at the far end. This was the original laundry room before we built onto the house. My brother would come in here because it was next to his room and always run his shirts through the dryer so they wouldn't be wrinkly. He always wanted to look nice as a teenager. This room has housed a lot of people. Years ago, Dakota's mom, Heather, lived here. My uncle Peter lived here while he went to college, and soon my 16-year-old cousin will be moving in here too. Mom and Dad always seem to find some way to get someone else into the house. My brother Reeve would sneak out at night in high school through window wells like that one. He took me a couple times. My mom apparently knew, but she didn't really think it was a problem. Emma, who lives in this room, was born just a few days after we moved into the house. I remember waking up in the morning and finding my grandma in the backyard and the garden with my other siblings. And then she told us that the baby was being born. The back part of the basement was turned into an apartment by my parents when my brother Reeve got married. They wanted to make sure that he and his wife Taylor had somewhere to live. In a month, Sarah and her fiance Scott are getting married, and they've been building their own furniture and putting that in here. The windows have never had blinds or drapes. I used to have dance contests with my sisters, which I'm sure the neighbors enjoyed. The blue toy box was painted to match the room of me and Reeve. Now it holds the toys that his daughter plays with when she comes over. Hippos are my parents' favorite animal because of some inside joke they had when they were dating. My sisters have switched out all the pictures in the house for pictures of hippos once.